everyone. Hi, welcome. Welcome to this video. Welcome to my channel if you're new. And you've picked a good one because today we are not actually wrapping. We are talking about the culmination of everything that I read in the month of November. So November is a special month here on BookTube. It is Nonfiction November, which is an old event put on by Olive at a Book Olive. And this month she had 4 wonderful prompts, as she always does, 4 one-word prompts. And I read 3 nonfiction books. And they were all, well, actually one I'm in the middle of it. So let's start with nonfiction books. The first one I'm going to mention that I've already done a whole review on, and I will link down below, is Roxane Gay's Hunger. So Roxane Gay is a social commentary individual. She does a lot of interviews and has a lot to talk about what's going on in society today. She is a writer, and this was my first book by her, and it's really talking about her and her struggle with her body. And as someone put it in the comments, I'm sorry I don't remember who, but someone in the comments mentioned that it was really a slice of life for her, a slice of her life. And it was particularly when she was having a lot of struggles and emotions around her body. So that's what Hunger is about in a moment's breath, I suppose. The next nonfiction book that I am still in the middle of is Catherine the Great. I am about halfway through Catherine the Great. It is fantastic. Actually, Una from the Codex Cantina, he picked up Catherine the Great, and we've decided to do a spontaneous buddy read, and our goal is to finish Catherine the Great by the end of January. This is a phenomenal book. It has everything in it. There is intrigue and love and desire and political maneuvering and the climbing of the ranks and villains and heroes and drama. I mean, it is all in here, and Massie is a phenomenal writer. He is incredibly engaging. There are blurbs all throughout this book, and one of them was like dazzling, compulsively readable. All of that is completely true, and I really want to go through and read all of Massie's books, but particularly his books on the Russians. So there are 3 other books, and I'm gonna put a call out there right now. If you are interested in reading Massie's series, and you know, maybe you've already read Catherine the Great, but if you're interested in reading his other 3 books, will you let me know? Because I'm interested in folks that would consider buddy reading this with me, so I can stay on track and prioritize this read. Because before Una and I decided to randomly buddy read this, I was reading this on my own, and I would push it aside for other books that I was not buddy reading. I mean, that I would put this aside because I wasn't buddy reading it with someone else, and that other person with a book that I was buddy reading or group reading or book club reading with, I knew that I would have to check in and talk about it. But with this one, I didn't have any rules in place, which has made it wonderful, but it also means that I've set it down for a couple of days and kind of forgotten about it, and then we'll pick it back up. So let me know. I'm putting that out there right now. I would really like to know if someone is interested in reading the 3 other Massie biographies. Again, you know, just not all 3, maybe just one of them. I don't know, you know, let me know. Okay, the next book I did as a buddy read, and again, I did a whole review on it. This is a fiction book, so I'm going to deviate because it's going to go into the last nonfiction book that I read. I have a plan, y'all. I have a plan. Okay, and that is The Biographer's Tale by A.S. Byatt. And again, I did a whole review on it, but basically it is about Phineas, who is a frustrated postgraduate student who is a postgraduate in postmodern literary theory. And he decides to put aside his plans for the literary theory and embark on writing a biography of a biographer. and it is his journey of that. Very postmodern, very meta, and very buttoned up, but funny in its own humor. So as I was reading this, Phineas decides to go on to this adventure where he ends up reading about a taxonomist, a scientist, and an obscure Swedish playwright. And I was like, oh, that's not really for me. And so what I ended up doing was, one second. I was like, well, I actually want to read about a topic that I'm really interested in. And so I picked up The Temple of Silence by Herbert Crowley. This is one of the biggest, tallest books that I own. And it was this is written by Justin Duerr. And what happens is that Justin Duerr sees a comic strip in a museum for a special showing, and he becomes really interested in this artist, Herbert Crowley, and then he ends up writing this biography. So actually very, very similar to A.S. Byatt, which is fiction. This is nonfiction. Justin just goes down this rabbit trail to figure out who this man and this artist was. And it's a very much detective work. I was sucked in. I read this in one day. A lot of it reads like a very long essay about Crowley. Maybe I'll do an entire review on it. I'm not sure. I don't want this wrap up to go super long. But what's really interesting about reading something of this size is that I felt like I was reading a newspaper article. You know, from an actual newspaper, because of the way I held it, and the way I was reading it really felt like kind of having to lean over, or you know, when you get to the bottom, you're lifting the book up, and the process felt very much like reading a newspaper. And the life of Herbert Crowley is very strange. In many ways, Herbert Crowley should have made it as an illustrator. And there are just some really unfortunate things that happen in his life, and some really bizarre things. And there's even a twist at the end, very much like a fiction novel. But what he did was that he created this cartoon called The Wiggle Munch, and it is often, hopefully this focuses, you can see the characters. This is often akin to, so what happened, let me give me a moment and let me back up. Okay, so what happened was that Herbert Crowley was published in the New York Herald. 12 of his Wiggle Munch comics were published in the New York Herald, and then he left. I mean, and then there's just no real reason or explanation why his cartoon did not continue. There are 14 strips of the Wiggle Munch by Herbert Crowley, and then he also has a bunch of other work. But he's so obscure, he's so obscure and so unknown that there could be artwork by this artist out there, and we just don't know it because he's just an unknown name in the art world. And it really is because of those 12 strips that ran in the New York Herald that is accessible through museums and through old film strips that his name is even out there at all. He had a couple of showings. He lived in an artist residence for a while. I mean, the man had just a very odd and interesting life, and reading about it was really, really interesting. And it was very much like the biographer's tale in that we are on an investigation to figure out who Herbert Crowley is, this really obscure artist that just doesn't seem to disappear into the ether with his life after he stopped being published in the New York Herald. He was, oh man, now I'm really getting into it. One second. Okay. Herbert Crowley was actually he was printed alongside, right opposite to the page of Winsor McKay, who basically came up with modern day animation, and it's just an incredible artist. Winsor McKay, no offense to Herbert Crowley, is just a better artist than Herbert Crowley. And Winsor McKay, he wrote Little Nemo and Slumberland, and it was really a visual feat. Really, really interesting. And so Herbert Crowley was actually printed opposite to Winsor McKay, and then they actually had an art showing, and again, he was alongside Winsor McKay. So if you are a fan of cartoons, or you love art, or you're just interested in what I'm saying, just know that Herbert Crowley was a contemporary of Winsor McKay, but Winsor McKay clearly spent his entire life dedicated to art, even I think dying over his art table. Always had a pencil in his hand, was always drawing, and really transformed the way that we understand animation today. Okay, so those were two. Maybe I won't do a whole review on that because I just talked about it right now. Okay, two more books that I'm going to talk about, and then I'll talk about a couple of kids' books. One of which is Wolf Hall. I read this with Sandy from Miss Reads a Lot, Jolene from Bookworm Adventure Girl, AJ Dunn from AJ Dunn Reads and Writes, and then two subscribers, Sonia and Deb. And we read Wolf Hall over the period of 6 weeks, and so we finished it in November. And this is all about Thomas Cromwell's rise to power. And boy, the writing, Mantel's writing is absolutely superb. She is very subtle, very, quiet under the surface, has beautiful metaphors, and often just, it is a feat. It is gorgeous. Her writing is. Now, it is also very slow. There were a couple of people in our group who didn't love the book as much because it really is quite a slow read. It's a slow burn, and Mantel, at the beginning of this, the cast of characters is like 6 pages long. So if you do get lost, you can go to that cast of characters and look at it, but there were a couple of portions throughout my reading of it where all I was doing was sort of going back and forth, but I didn't mind because usually that is, a sign that I'm learning and growing. So I didn't mind. But I know that it wasn't a favorite read for everybody, but myself and AJ really, really enjoyed this, and we're reading Bring Up the Bodies right now. At least I am. And then, the last book that I read was A Closed and Common Orbit by Becky Chambers. Oh no, I have 2 more books. Wow. Okay, we're still talking. Okay, so I read A Closed and Common Orbit by Becky Chambers, which is the second in her Wayfarers series, and I read that on my Kindle. An excellent light sci-fi read. That was for New Worlds November. She touches a lot on the themes of AI and the presence, our human connection to AI in this world that's very fantastical and wonderful. And it really is a book that you hang out with the characters, you get to know them, you love them, and you really, really adore them. So if you are interested in a light, character-driven sci-fi read, A Closed and Common Orbit, or if you start with her first book, The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet, both of those I have read this year and I've quite enjoyed. So those two have been quite enjoyable. And then with my book club group, I've done a couple of discussions on this, and I'll link those below. But Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451, which actually reads almost like a short story because it is quite short. I think it's only about 100 pages long overall, maybe 125 pages. I really enjoyed this. I will say, and I didn't say this in my discussion group, but I will say this, that there is a bit of a masculinity, that mid-century modern masculinity that comes out in this writing, that a bit gruffness and hardness that I typically see in the mid-century modern man, though that's not it's not a critique. It's just, for me as a reader, it's not my favorite style. But having said that, I did enjoy Ray Bradbury, and I thought he was a compelling writer with a lot of energy and a lot to say, and he could definitely get his point across in a short novel like this. Very effective. I could totally see why it's read in books today, in high schools today, or in the past. And then, okay, so that was it. And Fahrenheit 451 is a sci-fi novel, and so that was also for New Worlds November. Okay, and I'll quickly just go over a couple of 1001 children's books that I read before that you must read before you grow up. I read You're All My Favorites, which is written by Sam McBratney and illustrated by Anita Jerem. Yeah. Okay, so this is very similar to, or this is by the same team, I believe, that wrote P.S. I Love You, which is a very sweet book. And it's just all about cubs that think that the other one is their sibling is their parents' favorite, and their parents have to explain differently. Now, if you've ever read the book by Judy Blume, it's a picture book, and it's called The Pain and the Great One. It reminds that this book, You're All My Favorites, reminds me of the Judy Blume book. I actually like the Judy Blume book more than this book, The Pain and the Great One, which is, I mean, just fantastic. Again, it's all about how an older sister thinks her brother is the pain, but is her parents' favorite, and then the younger brother thinks his older sister is the great one, and thinks that that's his parents' favorite. And it just is, I don't know, it's a little more cleverly done, and it's a little bit more, doesn't just end on such a happy note. But for two books with very similar themes, I actually like the Judy Blume one more. It could also be because I grew up reading that one. The next one that I read was The Boy Who Grew Flowers. This was okay. I actually started to, and I don't like when this happens, but I start to wonder how much of the story is driven based on the illustrator's ability. So the illustrator is Steve Adams, and it was written by Jen Hortzwitz. Sorry, Jen, if you're seeing this. I actually really didn't like the illustrations in it. I don't care for this style. You see this, it reminds me a little bit of The True Story of the Three Little Pigs by John, I have it. I'll pop it up on the screen. I'll pop up the book on the screen, but it reminds me a little bit of the True Story of the Three Little Pigs, the style of it, and I didn't love it. I thought the book was okay, but I didn't love it, and it read like a fairy tale about a boy who literally grows flowers and is different. But I have read the books about children who are different are a dime a dozen. And for whatever reason, I didn't connect with this book, and I suspect that it had something to do with the illustrations, which I didn't love. Yeah, which is unfortunate because a lot of people in my comments talked about how beautiful they thought this book was, and I just didn't love it. Okay, the final book, which I read a couple of others too, but now I can't see them. Anyway, so the final book that I'm going to talk about is Kate Greenaway's Mother Goose. I love this. The illustrations were amazing. The rhymes were beautiful, but truly the illustrations are like so stunning. It reminds me of cottagecore, the fashion style of cottagecore, which you see nowadays. And so anyways, I just enjoyed the nursery rhymes, but mostly I enjoyed the illustrations, which were just fantastic. I mean, really, can you even? Very, very beautiful. So yeah, that was it. I had quite a bit of art in my life. It was a really wonderful reading month, and I really enjoyed everything that I read. It was truly fun, like a fun month of reading. So that is it for me. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for watching. Oh, and I wanted to ask, if you all know what style this picture book is in, will you let me know? I don't know. I'm gonna ask my husband tonight, and maybe I can get a better vocabulary about what type of art style I actually don't care for as much. But that would be really helpful. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for being here, and I will see you all in my next one. Bye, guys.